All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Leveling Up Mental Health. I am your host, Adolyn. I'm also an actor and a cognitive scientist.
And I am Andrew Nicholson. I'm a psychologist who practices here in Calgary.
And we are the dream team.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Best friends.
Best friends.
Video game lovers.
And we share the same dreams.
That's
when
right,
we go to bed together.
When we go to sleep, our minds meld and we share dreams.
And you know what I've been dreaming about?
What?
Well,
yes, I do.
What?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been dreaming about doing this episode because I'm so excited for our guest, Michaela Rebus, who is a psychologist here in Calgary, here to have a very awesome discussion with us about addictions, video games, and some of my favorite nerdy interests.
Yes, absolutely. That's maybe the highlight of the whole episode. Is it was a little surprise for you, that she shared many of the same interests as you, and so you guys go off on a whole tangent.
I love it.
I think this is a great episode, a great conversation. Of course, our podcast is all about that intersection of video games and mental health in whatever form that takes, and so the question of, is video game addiction real? Can video games be addictive? Is a question that I think comes up a lot, and there can be some debate around it. And so I think we have a great discussion, as always, a nuanced discussion. We look at different sides of the equation, and Michaela takes a strong stand on her answer of whether video games are the hero or the villain.
Who actually makes a choice. So
that's right.
we're so excited to share this with you, and once again, let us know what you thought.
Well, welcome to our guest, Michaela Rebus, who is a psychologist practicing in Calgary at Safe Haven Counseling. And we're very excited to have you join us on the podcast today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So start off by just telling us a little bit about who you are, so people listening know who you are, what your background is, and why you're here.
Sure. Yeah. So again, my name is Michaela Rebus. I work at Safe Haven Counseling, as you mentioned. I'm a registered psychologist. I also work a tiny little bit, still casually, with Alberta Health Services or Recovery Alberta at adult outpatient addictions clinic. Nice. And in general, in my private practice work, I usually see folks who deal with anxiety, trauma history, and addictions of all different types, including substance use and things that are more like behavioral. So anything from gambling, shopping, internet use, and potentially gaming as well. So
you work at Safe Haven and AHS at the same time?
Yeah, the AHS part is very casual, so
Still,
I get to
that's a
pop
lot of jobs.
Sure.
That is impressive.
Tell us a little bit about your journey in Calgary. Were you born and raised here? I think you went to University of Calgary.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Edmonton.
Oh, this is why I asked.
Cut the cameras.
The rivalry, I know. And I do have a soft spot for Edmonton, so largely because of some of the community that I'm still connected to there, kind of in nerdy world. And I came here, as you mentioned, for my master's program. Right. And I stayed in Calgary because I met my partner, who's my husband now, here, and his jobs are pretty Calgary-centric. So yeah, we live here.
You said nerdy?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so I have always been into things like fantasy shows and books and sci-fi. And
wait, we like fantasy.
Oh, you do?
You didn't even tell me this. You brought a guest who loves fantasy?
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, we have to change the topic of the whole subject now. Yeah. Wow. Okay, what fantasy book's your favorite?
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, Lord of the Rings is a classic.
Of course.
Yeah.
Probably a series that had a pretty big impact on me growing up was the Dragon Riders of Pern series.
Dragon Riders of Pern?
Yeah, it's all about dragon riding.
Nice.
Just like...
Who's the author for that?
Anne McCaffrey, I think.
That's one I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's surprising, actually.
I
A
know.
fantasy series you don't know.
I know. I was like, I thought it was Dragon Lance or something, but Dragon Riders of Pern. Okay, noting that.
Yeah.
Sorry to hijack this conversation. It's supposed to be mental health and video games.
That's all
not
right.
Mental
Go
health
for
and
it.
fantasy books. So,
Well, and here's another surprise for you. So I know one of the other nerdy interests you're into is anime. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
your favorite anime? I don't care. You're
He's
gone.
so excited
You
right
leave.
now.
Hard to say my total
Yeah.
overall, but probably favorite anime movie is Spirited Away.
Oh yeah.
Studio Ghibli.
Of course. Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've seen that one.
Yeah. That's like anime that everyone's sort of seen, and then
Yeah.
there's like anime. Then
Like-
there's like One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, those types of
Okay.
things.
Yeah.
Those are the big ones people know.
Yeah. Do you watch any of those?
Oh yeah, I watched Naruto growing up.
Yeah, me too.
Bleach, Death Note,
Death Note's
all
great.
favorites. And I don't know, like I'm trying to throw my anime cred out here,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
something like Mushishi. I don't know if you've heard of that
Which
one.
one?
Oh.
It's called Mushishi.
Mushishi. Yeah.
You have heard of that?
I
Okay.
have heard of that one,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. That's like another favorite. It's almost like it's got a vibe of like bedtime lullaby almost,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
slow
It's a slice of life
storytelling.
anime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here too, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no, that's okay. I knew you'd
I've
like
been
that.
trying to get Andrew into anime for years, our entire friendship, and he's
Yeah.
like, "No, I don't like the eyes." That's what he always says.
I didn't.
He's like,
when
the
have I
big
said
eyes. You said that about Kingdom Hearts. You
I
said
don't
that
think
about anime because
Kingdom Hearts
they
is
have really big
dumb.
eyes, right? They draw.
Sure, yeah.
Listen, I play Japanese RPGs.
That's true.
That's something.
That's true. That's true.
I watched the live action One Piece.
Oh, did you?
Oh boy.
Does that give me negative anime cred?
Is that your what's your review of that one, Andrew?
I liked it.
It's actually not bad.
But see, I had nothing to compare it to. I
the
don't know
anime's
how.
way better.
Well, I'm sure it is, but it's like 1,000 episodes, isn't
No,
it?
they're coming out with a shortened version of it.
That would be really helpful for somebody who wants to get into
I
One
know.
Piece but doesn't want to, power through the hundreds of episodes.
Okay, my last question. All
right, go
we
ahead.
can talk about mental health.
It's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you think the One Piece is?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I to be honest, I personally haven't watched One Piece.
I think the concept of One Piece is in the anime, they're setting it up to be the thing that gives you the most happiness or freedom or something like that. So watch this.
Okay.
What do you think in life feels like the One Piece in terms of mental health or happiness? I brought it back.
That was good.
There we
That was
go.
a nice segue.
Yeah.
Things that give you meaning. This is a hard question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Start
a hard
off strong.
podcast. It's a hard podcast to be on.
I think it's very individual, and it's probably up to a person to think about for a while to decide, with based off experiences in life, maybe what feels like the things that give them the most meaning. So that's my short answer.
That's
I
a good
guess.
answer.
I think that's a
Great
good
answer.
answer. I often tell people when a classic therapist answer is it depends.
Yeah.
That's I say that for a lot of things.
It's like a theme of we could have called our podcast.
It depends. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like every episode we've said
We should call
at
that-
the end.
yeah.
It's nuanced.
It's nuanced.
It depends.
That should be our podcast when we're like 75, 80.
Yeah.
And we're wearing Depends.
Oh,
Ah,
good one. So, anyways,
Really proud of that one.
so one of the nerdy interests we are very passionate about is video games. Obviously, that's part of the topic of this podcast. Have video games been a part of your life? Are they an interest of yours? What video games do you like?
sure. Yeah. I have been into video games as well. Anything from like RPGs or like MMOs. I played WoW for a long time in my early
Excellent.
20s.
Yes, so did I.
I almost lost Andrew to WoW.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to talk. We're going to talk later about boundaries and balance, right?
Oh,
So
yes,
this is
absolutely. That was something we had to learn experientially.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I've also enjoyed like horror puzzle games, like Until Dawn, that kind of thing,
I played
or
Until
like
Dawn.
yeah.
Only a bit though. That's one where you get they have the multiple characters and they have multiple storylines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's too scary.
Yeah.
Couldn't get. Yeah.
I found it easier to play with somebody else.
Yeah, I
as
know.
well, so
That's what
it's
you have
not
to
just
do with
me.
horror games.
Yeah.
Andrew loves like horror games, and I'm like, I can't. I need to watch like an episode of The Office afterwards or something.
Yeah. It's only, I think, I can't do horror movies or shows. I can only do games. And I think it's because I have control, maybe. I don't know.
For me, it's the opposite. I have a harder time with like horror survival games because you do have to kind of react in the moment. And that makes me, I just don't like, that's just too much for me. It really amps me up in the moment. So I play more like the puzzle type games. Or,
in a movie, you're like, that's their problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're going to die.
I can't do anything about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Totally. But maybe also think like casual kind of games like Katamari Damacy. I don't know if you guys have heard of that one.
I know of it. I've never played it, but
you're like a little like an alien prince character, and your job is to roll big clumps of things around the city and around the town. So you start with a tiny little ball, and you have to roll up all these things that are in the room up to a certain size or up to like in a certain time limit how big the ball can get. And I find that, I don't know, soothing for some reason. So
is it like satisfying?
I do. Yeah, I find it satisfying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I could see that.
There's no like time limit, or do you have to race against the clock or something like that?
Depends on what level you're playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Also dance rhythm games. So I used to play tons of DDR and Just Dance. If I had to pick a favorite game, or probably the games that I've logged the most hours on, it would be something like DDR? Or Just Dance.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Would you play DDR like at the arcade or at the movie theater where they have arcades?
A bit, yeah. I used to play it mostly at home. I had like a soft mat, but I would play with my friends.
That's incredible. I know. I've done the Switch one,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The mat one.
Yeah, that's great. Any current video games that you're playing?
This year, actually, I played Stanley Parable.
Oh
my goodness.
That's on my to playlist, but I haven't gotten around to it.
I mean, if you're somebody who loves like thinking about the world from multiple different perspectives and some really, really good voice acting in a very small world, but it's so expansive at the same time. I loved Stanley Parable. I thought it was great. So
That's cool.
That's
would recommend to anybody who's likes the deep end, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard really good things about it, but just haven't gotten around to it yet.
It's going to break all the things that you know about video games.
Oh boy.
That's what I would say.
Wow. That's a bold statement. I'm excited.
Oh, we got to play it, and then we'll have to have you back after we've played it.
Yeah, we can do a review,
Yeah.
a review discussion of it.
Yeah,
For sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've established nerd cred, you have these interests, but as you're saying, you practice as a psychologist, and you have a background in addiction. Is that right?
That's right.
And so that's part of why we wanted to have you on as well. Is our podcast is all about video games and mental health, the intersection in whatever way that looks like. And I know video game addiction can be a big topic, a big question people have. So I'll come right out and ask it: is video game addiction real? Is this a thing?
Now you've established your psychology credit.
That's right.
Loaded question.
I know.
But I think it goes, this question actually to me feels like an echo of another question that comes up in addictions in general, which is like, should we even use the word addiction or addict, or move to some other kind of language that feels a bit less boxing into people? What I found working with clients in general around this is it depends on the person.
Yes.
So some people really enjoy having things framed in terms of addiction because they feel like that keeps it front of mind for them, and it makes them think about, what they need to do to kind of keep on top of that day to day, knowing that they could have maybe had a problem with that in the past. And other people find it to be just too much labeling and not really enjoying the idea of kind of being boxed in by the term. So yeah, that's addiction. In terms of video games, I think as a therapist, I find it useful to use that term because I think it does open up the way that people can sort of access resources around dealing with these struggles that they might be having. If they are finding that gaming, for example, is kind of like taking over too much time in their life, or maybe it's starting to have some impacts in other parts of their life. So I do find it useful to use that term. And maybe someday in future we'll, change all the language around problematic behaviors or something like that. But yeah.
So is there like a criteria we look at to define what addiction is?
Yeah. So I think the sort of the short answer on that would be use of a substance or a behavior that feels out of control and causes negative impacts in our day-to-day life. The key part being the negative impacts. And so, that can apply to a lot of different things, right? It could be anything from, drugs and alcohol to, again, things like shopping, internet use.
Doom scrolling.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I've heard that definition before. And I think the question that comes up for me oftentimes is then I'm like, oh, so the time you engage in the activity may not matter as much. Like you could play video games 10 hours a day if you don't see that as a negative thing.
I would say if you're thinking to yourself the amount of time, like in that example, like if I'm spending 10 hours a day and and that's the time I want to spend on it, it's not really impacting other parts of my life, or, I've set aside that time in my day to do that, then that's okay. But if thinking about the amount of time itself feels like that's kind of getting to be a bit much in somebody's life, then that could be the negative impact as well.
Because often when I've worked as a youth worker before, and often when you work with kids, they don't see what they're doing as a necessarily quote unquote negative thing, right? I mean, most kids will love to sit in front of a TV 10 hours a day, but then we come on as adults and go, well, I don't know if that's healthy for you. So how do you communicate that to, or are we maybe wrong as adults?
That's a great question. It comes back to it depends, maybe.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of depends on, I think for kids in particular, it might depend on the age of the child and kind of what the family sort of culture or, parenting style is around that type of thing as well. If it's more, family has a lot of structure around what things are okay for how long, then that might be something to talk about with them. But if the parents are more kind of letting the kid lead, then maybe that's also up for them to decide as well. But yeah, kind of coming back to do they notice that there are also other negative impacts happening, like kids having a hard time with school or losing focus, or maybe spending money that they don't have on downloading things,
to mom
DLC.
and dad's credit card. Get that new Fortnite skin.
That's right. Microtransactions. That's interesting. The whole, like, it can be a very, I don't know if subjective is the right word, or just it's a big gray area, which goes back to why people sometimes think is the term problematic. Because you think about somebody who plays 10 hours a day, if they're a Twitch streamer and this is their main source of income, we probably wouldn't call that an addiction. But somebody who, it's maybe missing work or interfering with their social role functions, that could, maybe we'd put that term on it. But it seems like it can be very subjective and open to interpretation.
For sure.
Yeah. Do you find in your work, and whether this is video game addiction or addiction in general, is it common that the person struggling won't have insight into that or awareness into it? And sometimes it's family, parents, partners who are saying this is a problem, and how do you navigate that? Because I can see that being complicated. Yeah,
for sure. So I've had both. I have had many, many folks who come to me because they, for themselves, sense that there's something that's kind of off about what's going on in their life. And they see those sort of consequences happening. And also I've had folks who have been asked to come and chat with me because somebody else is concerned about them too. And so that actually speaks to another one of the areas of life that could be impacted, is relationships, right?
Right.
And it might not be that we're noticing that impact is happening in the relationship. It might be the other side of the relationship is saying, hey, something seems off here too. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are the things with video games particularly? How does video game addiction tend to show up? Maybe more specifically, we have this broad, does it get in the way of your life or functioning or relationships? But what does that look like in your experience or clients that you've worked with?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of the time it might be that time piece, right? It's like people start saying to themselves, oh, I have been kind of spending more and more time than I used to playing games. It could be losing sleep, like staying up late at night.
Oh no.
You're like,
kids are an addiction. They keep you up. Work is an addiction. I shouldn't have to go to work 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That's 8 hours of time I would rather use on relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
And this is tough, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it could be an individual choice around, well,
Totally.
I'm okay spending, my entire free time on gaming because that's the thing that's the most meaningful. But it could be, time, maybe pieces around the finances. So like buying DLC or buying new games when they come out right away. Pieces like that where it's just maybe spending a bit more.
What about like neurophysiologically? So when I hear alcohol addiction, I think, okay, there's like a little biological part to it, or some of the drug addictions. Is there something similar happening with video games, or do we think it's not something like that? Or is there, and maybe you can differentiate like behavioral addiction versus like a physiological addiction?
For sure, yeah. And I think this is a really key point that is also part of this contention around whether video games are in the realm of addiction or not. Up until very recently being like the 2010s, it was only substances that were considered to be in the umbrella of addiction according to our kind of diagnostic criteria.
Oh, that's pretty recent.
Yeah.
2010. Yeah.
I think it was in 2013 that gambling was added to the DSM in that area of like addictive problems. And there are still many things that have some similar features that we talked about earlier, like shopping, internet use, screen time, all that kind of stuff that hasn't been added to the DSM yet. But they do share a feature neurobiologically, which is the reward pathway.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And the dopamine that gets released. So dopamine, you guys might be familiar with this already, but I'll just mention.
No,
I've heard of it.
Dopamine being a neurotransmitter that gets released in our brain when we do something that's rewarding or satisfying, and is also connected to kind of this sense of this is good for my survival, so I should do this again.
Right.
So it tells our brain, pay attention to this behavior that we just did and remember to do it again later. And that can apply to anything from eating to seeing a beautiful piece of art to getting frisky to completing a goal. All of those things release that sense of reward and the dopamine that's associated with that. And so things that give us that sort of instant gratification, like gaming, many pieces of gaming that can give us instant gratification, will do that as well. Right. That is a sort of a common thread, and it's something I often chat about with my clients, just so they can understand a little bit about what might be going on for them and why it is so hard to make changes or to kind of find a balance that is working for them, because our brains are telling us this is a good thing. We should do it all the time.
Do it more, do it constantly. No, I think that is helpful, and it's helpful to understand even if it's something we don't feel like we're struggling with, just those moments where we think, okay, well, I could go work on a project that is meaningful to me but is going to be hard work, or I could go play video games. Well, this feels way more enticing because there's that immediate dopamine drip that starts. And we talk about in our first episode, there's this idea, there was some kind of article where a game developer was talking about it, but kind of that idea of games, like obviously games are designed with this reward pathway in mind, and there's this idea of the 30-second gameplay loop where it's like at every 30 seconds at most there's some kind of reward happening. And so it's very like games, even maybe more so than other things, are designed with that idea in mind, that it's always rewarding you because the idea is they're not trying to get you addicted. They're trying to make it fun, but then that could easily...
The side consequence is that it becomes hard to put down. Yeah. So I'm curious about, though, these games exist. It's going to be part of our lives. And I feel like when I was growing up playing games, they weren't as maybe dopamine intensive. Like things felt slower, our attention spans felt a bit longer and things like that. But now it feels like everything is faster and faster, more and more connected, and they're really trying. I know you were trying to say the benefit of the doubt, like they're not necessarily trying to, and I don't think they're trying to make you addictive, but they are trying to capture your attention all the time. And so I was wondering if you could speak to a little bit about like what you think about that. Is that a good thing, or do you think our And what's happening to our dopamine? Do we get less and less of it the more we engage with it? Can we repair this process later on, or yeah?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, actually, I recently did a little bit of like online training through the Boston Children's Hospital has this thing called the Digital Wellness Lab, and they have a clinic that is specifically for problematic interactive media use. That's a catch-all term that includes like internet and doom scrolling and gaming, and probably things like, being super into your favorite Twitch streamer and all that kind of stuff as well. And one of the things that they did mention is they're trying to create relationships with like game companies as well, so that they can sort of talk about the fact that, as game creators, there might be a bit of responsibility on the companies to think about what the impact is on the general population and how we're kind of like consuming gaming. As to whether we can sort of repair that process, I think we can make modifications to what our brain finds to be our usual patterns. So things like giving ourselves alternatives to get dopamine. Just doing some of those other things that I listed as options, like creating art, for example, could be something that also gives us dopamine. So not to cut out gaming, but to have other alternatives that are available at the time. Just kind of like what you were saying, I could go work on this project, or I could go game for a few hours. Giving ourselves the option to choose. Right. I'm going to go work on this project and build up some tolerance around getting dopamine from that in a different way. Another thing that I chat about with clients often is giving ourselves lots of little positive reinforcements for things that might seem small at the time. For some people, putting all the dishes away is like, well, I should just be doing that and not even thinking about it. But if we slow things down a little bit and tell ourselves like, good job, like high five me, I did the dishes, we can actually give ourselves dopamine that way too. So there are alternatives out there. And we can sort of retrain our brain to get that from other sources. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. And kind of helping us remember that we can get dopamine from other things, and we can be a little bit intentional with it, rather than this kind of curated thing where there's almost like a passive dopamine reward happening. And
not to say that like there are many things that are great about games as well.
Absolutely.
That there is that sort of instant gratification piece, but there are so many skills that people can learn from games, like practicing their puzzle solving skills, their problem solving, the kind of reaction time piece, which I think has been studied somewhat over the last few years. The using teamwork, right? Like connecting with friends and doing things in a group, and then sort of the greater community piece as well is something that I'm really, happy about. Somebody that has been in kind of like what I feel like is nerdy culture for a while, like the community piece means a lot to me.
Anime and video games. And fantasy books. It's a lot of nerd.
That's me.
But a lot of lovely communities who like those things.
Cosplay as well. So
nice.
all that stuff.
Awesome.
So I really feel strongly about the fact that there is a benefit to doing these kinds of things and hobbies.
Totally.
It's just finding a way to integrate it into our life that feels reasonable and balanced. So.
Reasonable and balanced. I think those are really key terms.
I agree. I think the community aspect is so huge and so cool. I mean, we get to do this, right? Like we connected with you because of these shared interests, and and look at this. We chose to work on this project rather than play video games.
It's true.
I'm already practicing what you suggested.
High five, positive reinforcement.
Yes. Oh, there we go. We're doing it.
Good job.
So that's a good segue. You're already kind of answering it, but what are some of the things other things that you might suggest to somebody who might be struggling with this or worried about it, or things that you might work on with clients when they're struggling with these things?
Yeah, sure. The very first thing is awareness, I would say. So getting to know what our patterns are around like our engagement with something like gaming, and just checking, are there any impacts in other parts of my life? I like to use the metaphor of kind of like if you have like a pie, your whole life is a pie, and all the slices are sort of different things in your life, like relationships and physical health or mental health, work or school, free time, all that kind of stuff sort of is the different pieces that makes up our life. And somewhere in there is gaming. How much of the pie is that taking up? And is that squeezing out other parts of our life? And what would those impacts be? So is it that I'm spending more money than I normally would on new content or new skins or something? Is it, that I have decided not to go see my friends in the last few weeks because I've been really into a game, or sort of choosing to reduce my engagement with them in person, but we're online instead. That could be something to weigh out as well. And maybe there's a piece to keep there, but am I giving myself options to kind of see friends in person? So just a couple examples, I guess. Another piece would be, once you're getting a sense that those warning signs might be in the picture, is to think about what would my ideal sort of scenario be around this? So what would I like to see myself doing in my day-to-day life in general? What does my ideal kind of pie look like? And then what sort of boundaries do I need to set in order to get there too? Right. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so so we have the awareness, and then you're mindful about setting those boundaries. And at some point, if you do need to get clinical help or anything like that, is there a certain intervention that works better than others, or what kind of modalities are effective?
Sure. I tend to use a bit of a mixture of things. A lot of it does come from the CBT world, kind of cognitive behavioral therapy. I tend to lean towards the philosophy of dialectical behavior therapy a bit more, which is more about kind of going back and forth between acknowledging and validating the reasons why we are the way we are, and then moving into the making changes and shifting our thoughts and behaviors as well. I just find it as a little bit more buy-in for people sometimes and validating. That's me though. That's my approach. I think mindfulness does play a role there too. So I like to chat with my clients about finding ways to bring them into the present moment if they feel they are doing their gaming in a way that is kind of mindfully engaged in the moment, or if they're just sort of zoned out, clicking things or tapping or whatever because they are, totally spaced out in their day-to-day life. That could be something to think about too.
Yeah. I think that whole paying attention to, because that pie chart analogy is sort of looking at what role is this playing in my life? What function is it serving, I guess? But then also that in the moment, paying attention to what's happening for me, which I think is something we don't always, I think just humans, we don't always pay attention to, but especially in video games. I know I've had that experience where I play it and I think to myself, this is fun because it's supposed to be fun. But then if I really think about it afterwards, I'm like, well, did I have fun playing that? Yeah. Or am I just feeling frustrated? Am I stressed out? Am I... and
it's only fun if I'm winning.
Right.
The dopamine.
That's why I only play single player games now. Yeah. I'm always winning. But yeah, just paying attention to all those pieces, because again, it speaks to that. DBT, you're speaking my languages. I love DBT. And that whole, both sides can be true. And you had sent us that resource from AHS or Recovery Alberta, the continuum of, there was a whole thing, but it had the continuum of gaming in it, which speaks to that, right? There's all these positives that can come from it, and there's possible problems. And so, and we might fall somewhere on that spectrum, or we might, different experiences with the gaming might fall different places. Yeah. So I guess I wasn't building to a question. I was just adding my own thoughts to that, apparently.
No, it's good. I have a question, you fancy smarty psychologies.
Okay.
Can you define for me and our listeners what CBT is and what DBT is, and why? I understand why you chose DBT first, but maybe you can go into a little bit more depth. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about CBT first.
Okay.
So CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is a cognitive approach to counseling, which is breaking down, looking at somebody's thoughts and behaviors around a scenario. And so the idea around that is there may be some types of ways that we're thinking about things and behaving around things that is not kind of the most helpful.
Right.
And it can also reflect maybe negative beliefs that people have about themselves as well. And so breaking down what those things are, bringing those more intrinsic beliefs about ourselves to light, and deciding whether those things really fit for us or not, whether it's true, whether it's helpful. Those are those two CBT questions I always ask people. And in that way we can create some change around that person's relationship to the problem that they're dealing with. Does that answer your question about CBT?
Yeah, break down those cognitive distortions and then have a new relationship with those thoughts. Exactly. And then DBT is
dialectical. Dialectical behavior therapy. I don't know if you can speak to this as well, Andrew. It's a little bit more complicated, but I'm really drawn to it because of the philosophy of dualities, which is this idea of, respecting and appreciating and sort of acknowledging the reasons why we are the way we are, and what that has done to help us survive difficult situations or have been coping mechanisms in some way. Which, by the way, oftentimes addictions are playing this role for people of being a coping mechanism for other reasons as well. So it's about knowing what the connection is between that and any underlying mental health concerns they might have. So that's the one side. And then the other side is the thoughts and behaviors and making change around that. And I like the sort of oscillating, like going back and forth between the two at different times. I find that for me, that just fits as a kind of philosophy, and seems to work well for clients. So yeah.
Great definitions. That was really good.
Well
Does that sound accurate to DBT?
Absolutely,
It's a very complicated,
There can be a lot of pieces and layers to DBT.
Yeah.
And I felt like when I was doing purely DBT, it was like an onion, just peeling back more and more layers of what this approach really meant. But I agree. That's the basic kind of underlying tenet to all of it. Because it's considered, I think it's technically considered a version of CBT, just in the way, like it's still a cognitive therapy at its core, but it brings in some mindfulness, and brings in these other pieces. It's a bit more well-rounded and holistic, I think, versus CBT, though modern CBT it's integrated a lot of that too.
Sure.
But yeah, it's that duality. We often talk about acceptance and change as that duality, right? Some things we accept. One of the mantras of DBT that I love is, on the one hand, you're doing the best you can. And at the same time, you need to do better and try harder. And it means it very non-judgmentally. It can sound a little bit like do better, but the whole point is two truths that seem like they should be opposing are true at the same time. And I agree. For me, that has always, I tell people DBT is in my bones, even though I don't do formal DBT anymore. I can't get that philosophy out of me because I think it speaks to the nuance of all of this, and relates to video games and mental health as well, right?
Yeah.
That yes, we want to talk about this concept of video game addiction, but we're coming at it not from this place of video games bad and they're so addictive. It's more from, hey, we love video games and what a role they play in our lives and all these positives. And there's also this other piece.
You start with CBT, informed through philosophical DBT. I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate. Do you know?
Oh yeah.
And he often talks about at the root of addictions is the trauma. There's something that we're trying to fill or cope. In your assessments and the people you've worked with, does that feel true? And what do you think about the therapeutic interventions that focus more on trauma and then treat addictions as sort of a secondary thing to treat?
Yeah, I do find it often that there's another piece underlying. And so when I work with folks who are struggling with an addictive behavior, oftentimes, we will be chatting about what other pieces we might be looking at. And so working with underlying trauma also being on a spectrum, I think. And, it could be a standout incident in somebody's life that they have a hard time moving past, but it could also be kind of just ongoing struggles with, maybe like attachments or relationship in their life, or they could have, for some people with with severe depression, it seems to be more of like an existential problem that happens at some point. And so I often find that we're going into talking about those things as well. So I do trauma therapy as well.
Right.
And there's a couple different ways that I go about that with folks, which I could mention if you want to know.
Do those ways have 3 letters in them too?
Some of them, yes. This is a very common thing in
it is.
counseling.
That's a therapy thing.
Okay.
Yes, some of them do. But one of them has 2 letters, the other one has 3 letters.
Okay. Hit us with those letters.
Yeah.
Hit us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first 2 letters are prolonged exposure,
Okay.
which is more of a...
PE.
Yeah, PE.
Phys ed.
Nice.
PE.
Phys ed is prolonged exposure.
Oh,
It kind of is, honestly.
Yeah. Torture. Yeah.
It's and it's so again, I think we can chat about whether this feels true or not, but for a lot of trauma therapy, there's this element of exposure to the difficult piece can be therapeutic and helpful, and so prolonged exposure is just a more specific kind of formal way of doing that.
Right.
It's a little bit more verbal as well. So clients are often going through talking about something in session, or they are practicing exposing themselves to difficult situations outside of the session as well. So this sometimes shows up in the media. You might have seen some like TV therapist telling their clients to like go to the mall because you're scared of the mall, and then they like take them to the mall and stuff. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Though I don't often go with my clients personally. That is kind of a homework.
You're talking about
piece.
shrinking.
Yeah,
what a great show.
yes, yeah.
Yes.
It is a good show, but even me as
There's
a
some
non-therapist,
problematic
I'm like,
ethics
wait
in
a minute.
that show.
I don't know if you should show up at his football game, and
Yeah. Oh man, that was.
There's so many.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Oh, now he lives with you? Okay.
Oh man, that's spoilers for me. But yeah, I haven't watched the whole
Okay.
show. But yes, yeah. Anyways, that's a whole nother topic we
Yes,
could go on
yeah.
talking about TV therapy. So that's PE. The other side is I also do ART, which is a more nonverbal trauma processing therapy where it's something that people still find really strange, but it comes from this sort of new realm of doing eye movements, also used in EMDR.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you know that one. So the eyes move back and forth while we are thinking about this kind of problematic situation, and that creates change in our brain through mechanisms that are still not fully understood, but seem to be related to bilateral stimulation. And I learned ART. I picked that one because it seems to have a focus on sort of like wrapping things up in a single session. So sort of choosing a issue to deal with and taking you through a very structured way of dealing that, still non-verbally, so the person doesn't have to say what they're talking or what they're thinking about out loud, which can be very helpful for some people who don't want to verbally reprocess problems, trauma. So yeah, that's my hopefully
that's really,
accurate enough
thank
definition
you for sharing
of
that.
ART.
A lot of those, because I think one of the trepidation or stigma of asking for help, especially on like trauma, is the fear of like, now I'm gonna have to talk about it, or I'm gonna have to share these things. And to know that there are modalities out there that are effective, that don't ask you to be so revelatory with some of your deepest, darkest fears is kind of, I think it's great to know.
Yeah. I think that's what people find helpful about it, and just giving people alternative options, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing to hear that you are working with some individuals around this stuff. And I'm curious, can video games be used to process trauma? Can we use the very thing that we think we're addicted to actually make us less addicted to it?
Oh,
Good question.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm not an expert in that.
We
I'm
can
any of these
philosophize.
things.
Yeah, we can think about it. Yeah.
But I am thinking here about a type of therapy called bibliotherapy. Have you heard of that?
Stop it.
¿Dónde estás?
Focus. Be
Sorry.
serious.
ADHD. Yeah.
So bibliotherapy, tell us what that is.
Right. So my understanding of bibliotherapy is that it's like using books to work through, mental health problems that are coming up. And I think they're, I personally, I don't know, but I'm guessing somebody out there is using other forms of media to do this, in a therapeutic modality, something I haven't heard of, but.
One thing I've heard of is, because EMDR and probably things like ART and some trauma-informed interventions are often used on individuals with PTSD. And so war veterans is a common one they've researched and studied. And I've heard, and I don't know if the veracity, if this actually works, but of war veterans using war games to help slowly, process their PTSD. Is that possible? Is that something like that doable based on theoretically even? Yeah.
Yeah, intuitively to me that makes sense, because there kind of is this element of exposure, and I have not done that with video games.
No, for sure.
But I have done that with clients to a very, very small degree around things like sound sensitivity. They don't like to hear like slurping sounds in real life. And so instead of listening to someone in real life, because that's too much activation for them, something that's a little bit less activating, but still going to, get that response going a little bit, is like a video of someone making slurping sounds. And so that would be sort of a step towards kind of building tolerance and exposure. So yeah, I could see that being
it feels like a
sure.
fascinating area of research for what games may help, what may not. Because I know, not to process trauma, but you even talked about in your intro, like I often use games as self-soothing, relaxation or to keep my escapism. And in some ways, I'm processing either the anxiety of that day or some sort of stress, and I'm allowing myself to express that in a very safe, fake virtual environment, like I can get all my tension out in a good old game of Rocket League or something like that.
Sure.
So I can imagine a lot of people find that sort of release valve in those games as well.
Oh yeah, and like the you just mentioned escapism, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's one of the things it's kind of the double-edged sword of things like gaming, right? Is it's so great because it is so nice to have a little bit of like, well, I'm just going to go, live in another world for a few hours, and that's awesome. And then for some people, it gets into this realm of like, I never want to come back to my usual life, So, but so it's kind of, in my mind, it's about finding the sweet spots and moderating our use so that we do get the release that we want from that, and not just to the point where it doesn't start to overtake our day-to-day life. So that's my thoughts on that.
That's great.
It's an interesting thing to think about, because like you're saying, that exposure piece, I could see that potentially being, so sometimes use movies or videos as exposure, and video games could be a form of that. I know we are looking into, maybe we link an article or something, because I can't remember what it is, but that VR has been used in some cases, or for
I think accessibility in persons with disabilities too,
things
like that.
And I think they've used it in exposure around like car accidents. Like VR simulating being in a car again, I think. So I could totally see applications. And then there's the other piece of, there's some video games that are about mental health. So whether somehow showing the journey of depression or something. And so I can see that being a use to even just validating and normalizing this experience, to say like, this is something people go through another form of art or media, which I think that can be helpful too.
Sure. It's that relatability, right? And that's kind of one of the great parts about games too. And, there's that storytelling aspect, right? And just like other forms of media where, you get to connect to characters and see maybe something reflected about yourself in those characters, but maybe even more so because it is interactive, and maybe, you're making the decisions that character is playing out now. So it's pretty cool. Maybe we should somebody needs to let us know if if they know this type of therapy is out there.
There we go. Now I've been wanting to ask you this, and I've been wanting to ask you this as psychology nerds, but so video game addiction, well, you were saying, so behavioral addictions weren't really added until 2013 into the DSM, which is our diagnostic manual, a psychologist, which that alone might be surprising to people, because I think most people would think about gambling as possibly addictive. I think most people, might agree with that.
Quite addictive, yeah.
So that it was just added. Just how long ago was 2013? 12 years ago, something like that.
12 years ago.
But from my understanding, video game addiction isn't in the DSM. There's something, I think they call it internet gaming disorder, but it's in the disorders for further study section of the DSM. But it is, and I can't remember now. I should have done my research. What it's called? Yeah, the ICD.
The ICD-10.
Yes.
Yes.
That it is in there. I can't remember if they call it internet addiction or gaming addiction or what the actual term is, but it is officially in there. So I'm curious your thoughts on that, and why hasn't it been fully added? Why is it a disorder for further study in ours, but it's in this international one? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy. I guess we have to ask the DSM committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that you have to
DSM
speak
committee,
for all these people.
get in the comments.
Yeah. If anybody's on the DSM committee, let us know. But I don't know. I mean, I am speculating here, but I guess I don't know why the ICD is kind of up on that. Like they put it in. They made a decision. Maybe I think that the reason that the DSM committee cited under that, like, further conditions for further research, is that there just hasn't been enough publishable research on it yet. So they're being a little bit more cautious, perhaps, about just knowing that the weight that having that in the DSM criteria is going to carry for people. But maybe that just kind of speaks to how this is sort of still a developing and growing area of awareness as well. I'm thinking about like the Boston Children's Hospital, that problematic interactive media use clinic. That's an example of somewhere that has kind of aggregated all of these conditions and said we are going to work towards creating a treatment around this and supporting people around this, and so maybe it's starting to become more aware. Maybe we'll see that developing in the next few years, but
And they'll have to have you back for that too.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll be helpful if and when it's included in there? Will it create problems because now this is an official label that can be thrown around?
Yeah, I think it personally would be helpful because I think people like to have the option of having the name available, whether or not they choose to get. And this is something that folks might want to know, is that you don't have to have a diagnosis to seek treatment in counseling or therapy. It is something that you can choose to do if you want to know if that name fits for you or not, and the associated kind of resources or supports that are around that kind of thing. So I think giving people the option by including it would be helpful, but also that's, it depends. It's up to the person to decide if they want to pursue a diagnosis as well.
Yeah.
And they can still get help.
Absolutely. No, I think that's well said, and that is important to know, because sometimes people don't know that. They think, well,
you have to wait for a clinical diagnosis.
Yeah, but it's good to know. And I think, that could be a whole other episode just on diagnoses, right? So that can be a contentious subject. There's different views on are diagnostic labels helpful, are they not? But I think that's an important point, that there's places where it can be helpful. Some people do find them helpful, and you don't have to adopt that if you don't want it. Yeah.
Well said.
Basically just repeated what you said.
Hey, isn't that what therapists do?
That's right.
Two therapists in a room, just paraphrasing.
Summarizing skill.
Summary,
it works.
Summary.
It works well for podcasts as well.
Right. We're probably closing. We're probably getting near the end of this conversation, and I'm sure hopefully we'll continue to have many more conversations. We have a thesis on our podcast, and we always ask, and I'm going to challenge you not to say it depends. Okay? I'm going to challenge you. Okay? So you have to pick a lane. It doesn't have to be all the way, but it has to be somewhat skewed.
Take a stand.
It is mean. Take a stand.
Okay.
Or at least we can have a discussion on it. Okay?
All right. That's fair.
Do you think video games, after having this discussion, are the hero or the villain?
My heart says hero.
Okay,
Know?
yeah.
I think about, and this is personal because it just speaks to the impact that kind of being in a community of people who are just interested in all different kinds of media it means to me. Like that, I think there is a value in having that that outweighs potential consequences. Of course, if those things are happening, we can get help around that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think video games are a hero.
Nice.
Oh,
Well done.
I love that.
You took a stance.
Yes.
I like
I
it.
did.
Came
Yeah.
from the heart. I love it.
Do you think there's anything specific to because this is a local podcast. We try to talk about Calgary on here. This is where we all are. Is there anything specific to Calgary that is related to what you see in terms of addiction, potentially video game addiction? Yeah. Is there anything specific to our community that you've noticed?
I think in terms of like there is a dedicated fan base of gamers here.
Yes.
You know, I see that coming out at like Calgary Expo, Calgary
Nice.
Comic-Con, and all that. So in terms of people's awareness with the connection to mental health, maybe is something that doesn't get discussed a lot in sort of local media here. So it's really cool that you guys are doing this this format of getting information out to people and just kind of exploring topics. So that's great. And I hope that people can connect the dots a little bit more and see what their thoughts are on it too. So it's a bit of a it depends answer, but
No, but well said. I think just bringing more light to the conversation, whether we're right or wrong, or whether we have to pick a lane or not. I don't think that's the point. The point is, there's just a dearth of information out there. Nobody talks about video games and mental health and putting it together. And I hope that this platform helps destigmatize these conversations, and that parents can have these conversations with their kids as well, and if they're curious about these things. And I think from having listened to some of the things you said, I think like you can ask your kids why they play the games they play, and what if it's a coping mechanism, what is it filling? And if it's just a purely fun thing, how can we build a healthier relationship around it? So,
yeah, just to build on that,
please.
Actually, around the parental piece, because I think sometimes parents are very unsure about this. There's a difference between enabling and empathy. And if parents can get to know what their kids love about their games and about the experience of that, that isn't necessarily enabling. So I think sometimes there might be a fear around that. It's bringing the empathizing piece, which means that they are opening up a conversation with their kids about what the game is to them, and I think that there's a lot more buy-in from kids, if they feel like they've already had a good kind of established chat with their parents, or kind of, know that their parents know what this is all about to them, to talk about things like, alternatives and making some structure around it, or moderating, or whatever it is that they kind of need to do, setting boundaries. So, I hope that's
I love that.
message
There's a difference between enabling versus empathy.
yeah.
That's really good.
That's really great.
Yeah. Because it's so true, right? If parents are coming in with just that hard directive of this is no good and you need to change it, I feel like that's less likely to lead to the kid or the teen being receptive to that. Whereas if there is that conversation of, well, what does this mean to you? Because you think of any other form of media or art or that kids engage with, it's meaningful to them in some way. And so games are no different. So understanding that, it just opens up this whole other side of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to give you a sec. Do you want to plug anything or share anything with our audience? How can they contact you or anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. People can reach out to me if they want to ask more questions about this. Folks are welcome to check me out at my Psychology Today page. It's just my name, Michaela Rebus. or they can find me at the Safe Haven Counseling Clinic website, and that's also my therapist page. It's just my name there as well. So, yeah, that's it, I
awesome.
think.
Wait. Your last name Rebus means something.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You started
Yes,
telling us
yes.
this.
So please, and I want to keep it.
Okay, a rebus is a picture puzzle.
Okay.
So you might have seen things like a phrase like "I love you, dear," and it's a picture of an I, and then a picture of a heart, and then a U shape, and then dear little animal.
Yeah.
That's a rebus.
I love Rebus
Okay.
puzzles.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
They're really fun.
Do
Yeah.
you feel like you're a visual puzzle?
Maybe when I'm cosplaying, guys.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite cosplay outfits?
I did a crossover samurai Dalek in
Oh, cool.
2013.
Yeah.
It took me 3 months
Wow.
to make, and it only survived one day at the con because I used Mod Podge to seal it, and it melted in the sun, and all the paint stuck together. So bye.
That's so sad.
Oh,
But,
that's so fun.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. Are you going to be doing any events coming up soon?
So I guess I can mention also that because of my interest in kind of fandom culture and this overlap between, is there an addiction kind of component to that or not, or could there be? I have run a talk at a previous anime convention about this. It was called "Am I Addicted to Senpai?" Boundaries and balance in fandom culture. And I'm hoping to run a similar type of talk again at future cons, local to Alberta or maybe outside of this province as well. We'll kind of see where it goes. But yeah, we'll keep an eye open for that, I guess, over the next little while.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
So,
Well, thank you very much for joining us. It was awesome having you on, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you again.
well, thanks so much, guys. It was really, really cool to chat with you. And this is such a cool idea. I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
Thanks. Well, we just had a wonderful conversation with Michaela. And what are your initial thoughts? Hot off the press.
First of all, Rebus puzzles.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Very cool.
I love them. I watched this guy on, I'm going to say Instagram, but it's probably TikTok and I'm outdated. But he always does these Rebus puzzles. He goes in the malls. In the malls,
Yeah.
in the super centers,
The
super malls, and ask people these questions, and I never get them. They're so hard for me. There's a little cultural nuance to some of these things.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to have to try some out.
Well, we're gonna put one at the end of this
Okay,
episode.
great.
That's my idea. We have to come up with one, and then we have to put it at the end.
Oh, yeah, make our own?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
In
Okay.
honor of Michaela Rebus.
Awesome.
But
Fantastic.
yes, to talk about our guest in the actual conversation, I thought, once again, as always, we're the best because we get the best people on our podcast.
We're the best
We are.
because we get the best.
Yeah,
guests.
exactly.
No, it's true.
It was such a good conversation. Obviously, I love the fact that we were talking about shared interests that led into her area of expertise. And then it was nice to have someone who's like an expert on addiction.
Yeah.
To really talk about what it is, what it isn't, to give us those definitions. Some of those things that I learned, for example, was that we don't actually have a good definition of what constitutes an addiction, and that some people might not even like being labeled as an addict, which makes sense. I'm like, yeah, that seems so obvious, but I didn't even think about that, especially in terms of video games.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree. It was great that she brought that background and training in addiction to it, which makes a lot of sense. We're talking about something in the realm of addiction. But I thought that brought a lot of credibility to what she was then sharing about video game addiction. And yeah, I love too that the kind of offshoot or tangent that we talked about, how addiction can often be a symptom of something else, whether it be trauma or other things that are going on. I think that's so huge, and a conversation that hopefully helps reduce the stigma around addiction.
Yeah.
That just like most unhelpful behaviors we might engage in, it's serving a purpose. It's a coping behavior. It's a survival mechanism. It's coming as a result of some other issue.
Yeah, something that's lacking or something that feels empty in your life. I was curious about what you thought about some of the modalities that she chose as the interventions, because you have a background. Would
Yeah.
you use some of those, not to critique her, but just to,
let's tear her apart. No, I'm kidding.
No, she was so smart and fantastic. But all those 3-letter modalities,
All those acronyms. Yeah. No, I mean, I have to say it was great having another therapist on.
Yeah, I know. You guys were vibing.
Yeah, we got to be therapy nerds together.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm a little bit biased because honestly, I'm trained in a lot of the same modalities she is.
Okay.
So I use a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy in what I do. I use dialectical behavior therapy. And ART, accelerated resolution therapy, is one of the trauma treatments that I do use. So I don't work a lot with addiction. Like I have some experience with it, but it's not a specialty of mine. And so I can't necessarily say whether I'd use those with addiction. I have, and I think they're useful, and there's evidence behind them to work with that. But yeah, just in general, I think they're all great modalities. They can be adapted well.
CBT gets a bad rep, though.
Yeah,
sometimes.
please, let's talk about this.
No, but like...
I want to talk about this.
I've tried doing CBT myself,
Yeah.
and I will admit, to speak for the people who give it the bad rep, it's kind of boring. It's a little bit boring. It's a little...
Well, you also have a bad attitude, don't you?
That's true. I've always had a
That's
bad
what I tell my
attitude.
clients. If this doesn't work, it's your fault. I'm kidding.
No.
Oh, no.
No. But, it's hard work. And I think the assumption is I go to therapy, I do a couple sessions, and I'll come back and I'll be fixed.
Right.
And then it doesn't happen, or they're like, "What? I have to make a mood journal?" Ugh. Like, yeah. So I don't know. What do you think? Like, how efficacious is it?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this because I'm trained in CBT. I use a lot of CBT, and CBT's been around for quite a long time. Relative, I mean, I feel like in the therapy world, everything is new when you think about it, but. Relative to other therapies, it's one of the established, it's one of the most well-researched.
Yeah.
And that's been changing. Like there's been lots of other great modalities that are getting more research, but there's lots of evidence for it, that it is an effective therapy for a number of different mental health challenges. I think the bad rap it gets is it can be a few different things. I think you're right that sometimes part of it is the expectations or assumptions people might come into therapy with.
Yeah.
And again, not to blame the clients, obviously.
No.
I think partly that's the job of the therapist, is to help talk about those expectations and talk about what to expect from this therapy, and what are some of your expectations coming in, and are those accurate or not?
Yeah.
And that a part of it, CBT does take work. Part of the whole thing is you're giving tools, strategies, interventions for people to take away, integrate practice in between sessions, and then troubleshoot, bring it back to the session. And I think it's hard work. It's hard to follow through on that. And I mean, I've been guilty of that as a client too. I go to my therapy session and there's suggestions made, and then I go back a month later and I'm like, I did nothing. Fix me now. So it's a human experience.
We do it for everything, though.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm taking music lessons right now, and I'm supposed to be practicing every week. And then, of course, 1,000 other things come up. And then the night before, I'm supposed to be, getting my the next day, and I'm like, all right, memorize. How do I do this? And then you obviously show up, and then you can't do it.
Yeah,
and you're like,
totally.
right. So
So I think that's sometimes a part of it too. I think that CBT, it's this weird thing. CBT gets talked about a lot because it is a widely known, widely researched modality. But then not all therapy sessions are created equal. I think sometimes CBD can be used, just like any therapy, can be used poorly, and it gets seen a certain way. Sometimes I think people use a combination of CBT with other things, but the clients don't always know. And so they just think, oh, I'm doing a CBT, but then maybe it's not. And so there's lots of pieces that go into it. And I think most importantly, because I'm not here to just defend CBT, it's not a fit for everybody. It's not the right therapy for everybody. I think it can sometimes be used in a pretty textbooky way, which doesn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would say, like, personally, having gone through it too, and then I worked for an organization that helped implement this program called Bounce Back, which was a 8-week self-directed CBT program. And I think what came out of the feedback from that was, one, was hard work, and two, you don't see the effects right away. And I think part of it's like CBT is not marketed as like a sexy intervention. You know, like when we think about therapy in media, it's like a talk therapy and these like big like breakthroughs and you know, like we talked about shrinking on the podcast, you know, like it's like it has to feel something, and the CBT feels it doesn't give you that cathartic release. It's mostly about breaking patterns, either cognitively, behaviorally. What's the other one? There's another one, right? Cognitive behavior.
Cognitively and behaviorally are the biggest ones.
The biggest ones, yeah.
I mean, we talk about emotions, obviously, are a big part of it too. But
so yeah, it's got a bit of a marketing gap to it, in my opinion. You know, but I feel like if you talked about it like, hey, we're talking about like thinking traps or cognitive distortions that actually fundamentally change the way you behave in your entire world. Like it affects the way you work. It affects your relationships, you know, it affects maybe the raise you're going to get, you know, like then we start to get into the heart of it. But I think a lot of people want to come to therapy and they want to have a space to like feel, and having like helped administer that program, like people were like, well, I guess I don't really need a therapist. I can just follow a workbook and it'll make a difference. And so what do you think? Where does do you want to, especially we were talking about addictions and stuff too, but like, do you want to talk about and process those traumas, or can you skip those things and go straight to here's a workbook and tell me what your mood's looking like?
Well, I can't tell people just do a workbook, then I'm out of a job.
Exactly.
No, I'm kidding. I mean, in some ways that is, I think one of the hopes of CBT is that, you know, we sometimes have a joke as therapists, we're trying to work ourselves out of a job. So CBT very much is one that can be done self-directed. You can learn the tools, learn how to integrate them, and then you don't need to come into therapy, which is great in some ways. But I think you're right. It's not this like sexy therapy, because it's, you know, we talk a lot about in challenging your cognitions, you're changing neural pathways, which is cool scientifically, but you're not feeling a change right away. That's something that you have to invest in and put time in, and the change happens over time. The analogy, you want to hear my analogy?
Yes.
Because we live in Calgary. So when it snows in Calgary, that first snowfall, you know, there's no lanes on the road. And so everybody just goes in whatever tire tracks are first made, and we all just follow, and we say, is this a lane? I don't care. That's our default neural pathway. The grooves just get deeper and deeper and deeper, and we just go with it. That's our default cognition, which in therapy we work on negative ones or anxious ones. And what we're trying to do is create new tire tracks. And so the first time you do it, it's going to feel like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm not even in a lane. What if I'm driving on the shoulder? And you're not really going to feel like anything's better. It's actually sometimes going to feel worse because you're going against the default pattern.
Right.
But the more times you drive through it, the deeper those tire tracks get. And eventually that will become the new default pathway. So sometimes
such a good analogy.
You just got to use a cool analogy.
So visceral. I can feel it. Yeah.
But that being said, again, it's that whole idea of that there's so many therapies, and, you know, some people do want to do more emotion focused work in therapy. And so, you know, there's emotion focused therapy, there's mindfulness based therapies, there's these other therapies that are more about get into those feelings in your body. Which I think modern CBT has adopted a lot of those, but, you know, CBT is, as you kind of classically think of it, doesn't do that as much. I think the other piece is very change based, and sometimes people feel a bit like why am I the problem here? Like maybe there's situational problems, maybe there's systemic problems. Like I think some of the like feminist therapies and those kind of things have done a great job of bringing in a more advocacy based.
This is true. This is very true.
So I think there's tons of really valid criticisms of CBT. Totally. I still find it useful. I think it has a place, but that's also why I've brought in a lot of.
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach, and that's what Michaela was saying too.
Yeah,
you know, she wasn't like I do this one thing, and she does a bunch of things, and then. You know, one of her favorite modalities was dialectical behavioral therapy.
I love it.
Everybody loves it.
Love it.
Yeah. So you described it as like a duality, right? And it's something like two truths can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
That's kind of
yeah.
I feel like when I think about what's happening in society and our penchant towards like picking sides, you know, I feel like we don't do that. I feel like we could all use dialectical behavioral therapy. Like it's always left versus right, you know, even though it's really an up versus down. But that's you know, but you know, it's like we can say two truths and hold both of these things as the truth, even though they're in contradiction. Yeah, you know. And so, what do you think about that with like video games? They can both be great. They can be the hero and the villain. They can be that. We know that. But as a person listening, I'm like, well, which one do I lean into then? Or what do I do? You know?
Yeah, that's good question. And that is something I love about DBT is that duality. And I agree. I think it's something we've kind of lost in our society these days is this ability to agree to disagree. And, you know, I'm sensitive to the fact that there's also a whole, again, if we think about systemic advocacy in these kind of pieces, like there is a place for saying, I am on this stance.
Yeah, for sure. And we should.
Right.
Yeah, there's
and
some
that
clearly
we shouldn't make
right
space
things
for the other side.
Yeah.
You know, DBT isn't saying that both truths are both equally effective or right.
Yes.
It's just recognizing there are two truths or perspectives, and then there's a lot of context around it. So I just want to say that because I know that sometimes is one of the criticisms of DBT is there are situations where we're like, well, maybe we don't have to hold both truths. Maybe we can take a stand.
And
something. And of course.
And another thing to contextualize it, we're talking about it from a therapeutic framework.
Yes.
Not necessarily solving societal issues.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So in therapeutic frameworks, the human is often in contradiction with itself all the time in various different ways. It's probably more than just two truths, right? Like speaking personally, I don't think I've ever had like an addiction, but I've certainly had problematic behavior that I've come back to again and again and again. While I'm doing the thing, like I'm playing a game, a part of me is like, I should be going to the gym,
right?
You know, and I'm like, this isn't making me feel good. I think my biggest one is like food, right? Like there are some things I eat that I'm like, I know this isn't good for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel sick, but I'm still going to take that bite.
Yeah.
So my behavior is in duality with my thoughts and my emotions.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Yeah. And I think with your question of how do you know which one to lean into? I mean, that's a complicated question.
Do I take that donut?
Right. Always. I think part of what we'd say in DBT is it's that awareness of what those two truths are.
Right.
Because then you can make a more informed decision. So one of the questions we often bring into DBT is what's being left out, which is essentially that question to signal to ourselves, what is the other side? What's the other truth? What's the other perspective? We use that word "and" in DBT. It's a joke among DBT therapists. We say "and" all the time.
Yes, and.
It's like improv.
Yeah. All
Everything
things are connected.
So it's that question, what's being left out? So if we're engaging in a behavior that we realize, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. So whether that is playing a video game when there's all these other responsibilities that need to get done, it's trying to build in that pause of asking myself, well, what's being left out here? Because often we get, I don't know, this is true for me, and I think it's true for clients I work with, but we get really autopilot into the thing I want to do, that dopamine reward pathway I want to seek. And then we get into that, I like to call them justifying cognitions.
Totally.
We just start justifying. I'm like, well, I've had a hard day and I deserve this.
Yeah.
And there might be truth to that. I'm not saying those aren't true, but it's that asking ourselves, okay, but what's being left out here? That is all true. I have worked a long, hard day. I do deserve some relaxation and rest. This is self-care. Yeah. And what else? What are the possible other sides? And then by bringing awareness to it, the hope is this a perfect system? No. But the hope is, can I then make a decision about what's most effective for me right now? That's the other DBT word we use a lot, is effective.
Right.
So it's not about what's right. It's not about what I should do. We take out right, wrong, good, bad, all of that. We just say, what's effective? Which just means based on my goals and values, what's more effective for me right now? Maybe it is effective to just do some escapism and take a break.
Totally.
And maybe it's more effective that, I haven't worked out in 2 weeks. I guess I should get on the elliptical for 10 minutes.
Yeah, or reframing that as the reward. Like, oh my gosh, I get this opportunity to move my body. I get to... One of the things I talk about when I run my unconscious bias workshops is like figuring out what your values are. Yeah. And then connecting that duality, that mismatch between those things to figure out which of those values is missing in the action you're about to do. So if you say, I value family, which is a classic one that comes up, I then ask, well, when was the last time you spent quality time with your family? And they'll be like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm working. I got this. I got that. And it's the same thing. There's some justifications for it. So then I go, well, perhaps one of the reasons why you're not feeling very happy right now is that's either not one of your actual values, which could be true. Like right now, you don't value that as much as you value something else. And you just need to be open to that and say, okay, or you're incongruent with your values, right? And so an example that I often use personally is it's really hard for me to go to the gym if I try to make it about aesthetics or I make it about some like societal norm or something like that. But if I connect it to the value of I want to spend more time in nature, which means I need to be able to go on hikes, which means I need to be able to strengthen my legs, which means then I need to go to the gym to go strengthen my legs, then I feel more likely to do those things. Or a classic one that comes up is I go, okay, you value family. How amazing would it be to be able to lift your kids over your head when you're 70? You know, that's valuing family. So going to the gym's not about exercise or, you know, or how hard it's going to be. It's you being like, oh, this is awesome because I get to spend more physical time with the things I love to do or the people I love.
Yeah.
And I think it helps me reframe difficult things.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Do you think people could use that if they feel like they're struggling with their video game use?
I think so. So in cognitive science, there's a thing called hyperbolic discounting. Have you heard of this?
I don't know if I have.
Yeah.
That's
Hyperbolic is a fancy way of saying over time. And the classic word people have heard that is from DBZ, the hyperbolic time chamber, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And discounting. So what we often do is we discount our current actions' future effect. We have a terrible time predicting the future.
Right.
And some argue that anxiety is you actually doing the opposite, is you thinking about too many consequences all at once.
Right.
If I get up this morning, what's going to happen? Or, you know, so it's you're not hyperbolic discounting enough. So one way to help with addictions is to think about what this one action will mean 100 actions from now. So if I take this one cigarette, it's not just one cigarette. Maybe it represents the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. And then what am I going to be like, not today, because it's not really going to affect me today, but maybe tomorrow, and then 10 days from now, and then 10 years from now. And then try to really connect this one action to the decades of version of you in the future. So you don't do the hyperbolic discounting anymore, but in a safe way, so you're not anxiety provoking.
Right. Yeah.
So it's an actual like insight.
Yeah.
So to your question, I think you could probably use something like that for video games, because I think the thesis we kind of came to was if you engage in any activity mindfully, then it's probably not going to be a problem for you. But it's when you do it mindlessly over time, and that's when it becomes disruptive of your health, your well-being, and your relationships. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And so I even think about it for myself, right? Those days where I have a busy life right now, I work, we do this, I have my kids. And then by the time, the kids are finally asleep and I have a little bit of time left, and I say, I'm going to play some video games, but recognizing I'm not going to play for 20 minutes. It's probably going to turn into staying up a little bit too late. So sometimes, now do I do this all the time? No. Sometimes I choose to stay up too late. But it's that question of, okay, well, showing up as a parent is a value to me. I want to be the best father I can. And so I'll sometimes use that of, okay, well, playing video games right now, as awesome as it would be, means I'm going to be tired tomorrow because I'm not going to get enough sleep. And when I'm tired, I'm more vulnerable to my emotions, which means I'm not going to show up as I shouldn't say not as a good dad, but I'm not going to show up as the dad that I want to. So video games right now.
I think you have very high standards for yourself. You're a fantastic
Well, I'm a little bit hard on myself. Yes, that is true. This isn't my therapy session. Choosing video games now means not showing up as the dad I want to tomorrow.
Right.
So that's kind of it's a short. I mean, that's just one day example, but that's kind of the idea.
Yeah. You know what's cool about that though, is you can do the opposite for positive things you want to do. So I don't need to do a full 2-hour workout. I can do 5 minutes if that's all I can do. And knowing that it compounds over time, in 5 days, in 5 months, I will have done so much. I always tell people this. I was like, don't count the number of days in a row. Try to think about things in averages. So if on average you worked out 3 times a week for a whole month, over 6 months, over a year, that's quite a bit of working out. And you will see positive changes. You don't have to do all or nothing. It doesn't have to be. And so I sometimes tell myself that too, where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm just going to go to the gym for 2 minutes. That's it. Just 2 minutes. And I'll just do like a quick, And then when I'm out there, I'm like, all right, well, I'll just do another 2 more minutes and I'll do something else, you know? Yeah. And sometimes it's as simple as that. And sometimes it is just 2 minutes. I've literally gone to the gym and gone for like 15 minutes, done a couple stretches, and I'm like, well, at least I got out of the house and I went.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's such a good point because we don't think about the cumulative effect
of the positives. Yeah.
But we so think about it the negative. It's so funny.
100%.
You know what it makes me think of is, there's like the Spotify wrap up thing.
Yeah.
PlayStation does a wrap up thing at the end of the year.
Oh no.
And so it's always like seeing the number of hours I've played video games.
But you're like, I was just 20 minutes a night. Like I just,
oh my God, that added up.
Totally.
But
that's me with my phone.
Right.
You know,
the screen time.
Oh my gosh. You're just
Nightmare.
like, I thought I was just checking my emails.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was on it for 8 hours today. What? Like that's 1/3 of my day on my phone.
Yeah.
But it didn't, because like phones are a really good example. It just compounds because you're working, but then you do a little and then you do a little and then a little, and out of the hour, literally every 20 seconds, you're looking at your phone. Like,
it's interesting. Would you say you've ever been addicted to a video game?
So Michaela touched on this where I feel like she was hinting at there's chronic addiction, so addictions that last over a long period of time, and then sort of acute addictions where maybe for a brief period of time you're like, yeah, this is it. And I've definitely had that. I think if we're defining addictions as disruptive of positive health and well-being, I've definitely played a game far beyond what was positive for my health and well-being.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a day or a couple of days, there's some games that just hook you, and you're just, I just want to keep playing. And then you start thinking about it. Or I still remember sometimes in school, you're like, I just want to go home and finish this game.
Yeah.
Or play with my friends. And I would say that probably would constitute an addiction. But I've been fortunate where I don't feel like over my lifetime it's been disruptive. I would actually say my phone is much more, like, I don't admit it to myself, but I would say, thinking about this definition, I'm like, oh yeah, I check my phone way too often. And sometimes it's the first thing I see when I wake up and the last thing I see before I go to bed. I have more of a romantic relationship with my phone than a person. It's the first beautiful thing I see, and the last thing I say goodnight to.
No, it's so
like,
true. I think about that sometimes
I'm
too.
addicted.
Like how quickly I'll just automatically pick up my phone first thing in the morning. And if you think like that's what I'm gonna shove into my attention.
Do you get phantom buzzes?
Yeah.
We don't even have things on Buzz. We don't even have it on Buzz anymore. Everyone keeps their phone on silent, but I still get phantom buzzes sometimes.
I know.
So I'm actually actively trying to work on that. So like I don't have a charger in my room anymore.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
It's I would agree. I think I have a much more problematic relationship with my phone because I've noticed when sometimes if I'm stressed about something at work or in my life, when I feel that uncomfortable emotion, the automatic habit is pick up my phone and start scrolling. Like it's that automatic distraction.
It is. So our coping mechanism is distress, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Just divert that attention. And so I've absolutely noticed that in myself. And it's been very interesting because it is so mindless, right? I'm just scrolling and I'm like, oh, I did that because I was starting to feel anxious.
I have a set pattern. So sometimes I'll see something on Instagram that'll make me lower my self-esteem about myself because social media. Then I'll go straight to playing chess, which is like a quick, a 1 minute blitz game. So quick hit of dopamine. And I have to play until I win. Because if you lose, it's and then that's the pattern. So, and then I can go back to doing whatever I'm doing. But if I don't have that distressing situation, I have no desire to really go back and play chess. Or when I do want to play chess, it's much more mindful and like I'm actually thinking about it. So it's I've noticed these things, and it's kind of the nice personal thing about having this podcast. It really makes you think about your own mental health.
I know,
more,
right?
You know?
Yeah. Makes us be very self-reflective.
Yeah, exactly. So what about you? Video games? Do you feel like it? And I know that PS5's got a lot of mileage on it. So
it sure does. Yeah. I don't know. It's again that, and this is part of our conversation with Michaela, is that kind of line between passion and addiction. And I'm very passionate about video games. But there are times where I've noticed that I'll be at work, or not when I'm with clients, of course. I'm very, very mindful when I'm with clients. But I'll be at work or with my
just
family.
on the Switch.
Yeah.
No. Sorry, what's that? No, just finish your workbook. That's CBT. No, it's really effective. Yeah.
No, I do not play video games while I'm in session unless it's an intervention that we're doing together. I'll sometimes use Mario Kart as a reward for people.
Oh, nice.
But I'll notice that like thinking about, I can't wait till I get home and I can play that game again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to say, like sometimes that's just excitement because it's a new game that
Totally.
it's like anything you're excited about. But I think sometimes it is too when I'm feeling less happy in my life, less content, more stressed about things, that becomes the thing that I'm kind of latching onto.
Yeah.
Of, I can't wait till I get past all the hard stuff. And then I can just sit down for an hour and play video games because that's like my oasis, which isn't always bad. Again, it's that escapism, but there have been times where I felt like it was more of a problematic relationship. So yeah, it's a gray area, I think.
I think it is. And I talk about this in my workshops too. I'm like, life is ebbs and flows. You know, you're gonna have phases. You can spend the rest of your life making yourself a project. You don't have to like, this is where I think sometimes I'm a bit afraid to sometimes use a label. Like, there might be a time where you do need to sit in front of Netflix and eat a pint of ice cream because you're sad.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're addicted to ice cream. Right. You know, it just means that you are in that distress. And it's a perfectly adequate coping mechanism. Yeah. It's when you're doing that every single day as your only coping mechanism, that's when we go, well, maybe there's some health concerns we need to intervene on. And I think it's the same thing, like, because going back to what Michaela was saying, like, and we're talking about Gabo or Mate and the trauma informed and your environment informs your propensity towards addiction. I think it's the opposite too, whereas some of the things you grew up with are your safe places. Yeah. You know, and more of us are going to grow up around technology. And there's something about even the phone that feels self-soothing or normal, right? So either we need to figure out a way to replace that with something that really truly makes us feel loved and it's not truly a coping mechanism, or other times where you're like, you know what, I just want to play 2 hours. Yeah, that's it. You know, and I just want that. Totally. And it can be amazing. Like, we've had so much fun sometimes gaming, and then all of a sudden like 4 hours go by. Yeah. You know, but it like, that's been fun. And I do that with you. I do that with my brother. I've done Baldur's Gate. When that first came out, I think I put like 90 hours in it in like 3 months. Like, you know, like, but I was so novel and interesting, and that's all I wanted to do.
I think hopefully something to take away too is just like, I'm biased as a therapist, but I'm sensitive to how people use these terms. Right. You know, a common one, and maybe we talk about this in another episode, but commonly people will talk about, I'm so OCD. And it's just, they like to be organized, which is not OCD. I work a lot with OCD, and it's a whole different thing, and it's very distressing for people. But addiction, I think, is another one where people will say like, I'm so addicted. I'm addicted to this game.
Yeah. I can't have my morning coffee. I'm addicted. Yeah.
And I think I'm not saying it's the worst thing, but it's just being aware of our language, and that for people who truly do struggle with addiction, how much it can rip apart their lives and how so incredibly difficult it is to work with and to overcome. So I think that's just worth mentioning.
No, that's a great point, and thank you for saying that. And we are going to have some resources at the end of the episode for Calgary-based and some general-based ones as well for anyone who is suffering from addiction. But yeah, it's a good point. Like, even we should be mindful of flippantly we use something that actually tears people's lives up in so many ways.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, should we wrap up with our skill testing question?
Absolutely.
All right.
So I have a gaming skill testing question for you.
I'm going to nail it.
110%. You probably are. Okay. So I'm going to have 2 parts because you always nail it. And then, so I got to make them successively harder.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know. So, you're making these hard. Okay.
First part is, which game do you think has made the most money, gross money of all time? Up until 2024.
Single game or franchise?
It could be a single game or it could be a franchise.
I think it's Grand Theft Auto 5.
Okay.
But my other answer would be Call of Duty as a franchise.
Okay, so Grand Theft Auto 5 is in the top 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Call of Duty's not in the top 10. Yeah. Or is it? No, I don't think it is. But the number one game that's made the most money.
Okay, hold on.
Over time. Okay, you want to guess? Yeah.
Yeah, I have to think about this. Would I know this?
Oh, yeah, 100%. You've definitely played it at some point in your life.
The number one game.
You may have played it when you were a kid.
When I was a kid?
Yeah.
Oh. Mario?
No,
No.
no,
wouldn't be
even
that.
more basic.
Even more basic.
It sometimes would just come pre-downloaded.
Tetris.
Nice.
Ah.
How did you do that?
I mean, you kind of.
I know, but still,
scaffolded
You
me
could have
into
done.
it.
I don't know, Pong. Like,
Yeah. No,
Pac-Man.
that makes sense, actually. Yeah.
Tetris has made the most money over time.
Yeah.
Up until 2024. So this is a list on IGN that I saw.
Okay. All right.
Number 2 is Minecraft.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Number
guess I can-
3 is GTA.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
10.
thinking like AAA blockbuster games, GTA is like the biggest moneymaker. But
Yes, for
yeah,
sure.
Tetris
but
has been around forever. And many people contend it's the perfect video game.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
It is really good.
All right, are you ready for yours?
I'm nervous.
So this is a psychology-based skill testing question.
Oh no.
We spent time in our interview and in our debrief talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, a widely known, widely researched, widely used modality of therapy. Who is considered the father of CBT, the founder of CBT?
Oh my gosh, who would be considered the father? I feel like I know this.
You probably do. You've certainly heard the name. It's a well-known name in the field.
It sucks because she mentioned mindfulness, and I keep thinking John Kabat-Zinn, who brought mindfulness with CBT, but there's
Yeah.
somebody before that.
You can get partial points for that
No, it's
because
not.
he's a well-known person.
I know.
You can just name a well-known person.
I
and
don't
they'll
know.
give
I
you
can't
points.
think of it.
No?
No.
I don't know if this will trigger your memory at all, but his successor,
Yeah.
the heir to CBT, was his daughter. And she continued on with developing CBT, ran one of the most famous CBT institutes, I think.
So it's not like Carl Rogers or something.
No,
that's
he's
humanist.
he's
That's
client-centered
and that's
therapy.
client-centered.
But he's often mentioned with Carl Rogers.
I know. I know. I can't think of it.
Yeah.
Who is it?
All right. His name is Aaron Beck.
Oh yes, I know
Beck.
that.
Yeah.
Easy.
His daughter, I believe, Judith Beck.
Judith Beck.
I think. Yeah.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good
one. There are other people who kind of contributed. There were precursors.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's commonly considered the father of CBT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. I want to leave it with one last note, which is that I really appreciated Michaela coming on. We had our first in-person one.
Yeah.
Which was super nice to have.
Absolutely.
And I just want to thank you for being so vulnerable in your conversation around it, you and Michaela, and that I hope people listen to this one feeling hopeful about whatever the relationship is with video games.
Absolutely. I think that's well said. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.